Well, you actually make the money when you buy. You know, this is the crazy thing. And you should never have to sell because land is a commodity and it's getting more and more prevalent. And I'll tell you, just the basics on this, the basic numbers. When I first started buying house and land, the average size block was 1,000 square metres. Today, the average size block is 400 square metres. And we saw last week Satterley say that they're going to do 80 square metre blocks in Melbourne. 80 square metre blocks. So think about the retirees who bought their house, 20, 30, 40 years ago, sitting on a quarter acre or 800 square metres. Think of the opportunities that they have. And particularly, New South Wales now, anything above 450 square metres, you can do a granny flat as of right. But soon you'll have the wave coming to Australia is student accommodation, is pensioner accommodation, is so many add-ons that people can use their land for. And it's really amazing. In fact, I even saw people saying they've got these camper flies, that where the people can get camper vans and put it on land. And I thought, wow, there's so much we can do if you've got the land.
That's true, because we've looked at tiny homes and container homes and all sorts of things. But obviously there's property in this. Property, some land isn't necessarily worth holding on to, is it?
Well, I buy land in urban areas. And the reason I buy land in urban areas is because, fact, it is the highest growing asset class in Australia. There's nothing that you can show me shares or anything that's outperformed residential Australian land. And, the numbers I use are, I originally bought my land at $16 a square metre. Today it's worth around $700, $750 a square metre and still going up. That land would be worth $1,500 a metre in Sydney or $900 a metre in Melbourne. So it just continues to grow. We have the highest population growth in Australian history. And we have an infrastructure boom where the governments now, federal, state and local, have all gotten together and realised, let's get smart about land use. And the smartest thing we can do is add density. Because the days of the Great Australian Backyard and the urban sprawl, that's pretty much been killed off by just our lack of finances.
What about places like, you're seeing Badgerys Creek, the big airport going in there in Sydney, and that's going to be a whole new complete transformation of rural land, if you like. Is there a time when people are buying land there, for example, that they're going to keep for a while and then sell? Is there, is it always buy and keep?
Actually, James, Badgerys Creek is a great case study because people started buying there 10 and 20 years ago thinking it was going to happen. Would I buy in Badgerys Creek? I'd buy when the airport opens, not before then. I want to actually see the jobs going in, not just the construction jobs. And I want to see the infrastructure being built, the rail, lots of things that have been promised that are going to happen in Badgerys Creek. But absolutely, yes, that's a 10 or 20 year target of where I would be buying land, but I wouldn't be buying there today because I need to buy land where I can get income off that land. That means that I can borrow 100% to buy the whole block of land and improvements and not pay anything out. So I'm cash flow neutral. So I have that balance because we've got to be able to buy land and be able to hold it.
So when we see these vacant land releases and things cropping up around the major cities, that's not the time to buy? Are you saying that you're better to wait until there is a bit more activity in that part of the city?
Well, no, there's some really good examples. I made an absolute killing in Edmondson Park in Sydney because they announced that they're going to build a railway station and a town centre. So we bought up a lot of land around there, 400 or 500 blocks. And, the prices went from $300 to $400 a square metre to now about $1,300 a square metre in the last 5 years. Now, that was because the accelerated infrastructure, the government going in there, and also zoning for density. Now, and you need those things, you need those overlays to ensure that you're going to get income throughout so that there's and there's population growth now, and there's going to be continued population growth because it's supported by government spending, government infrastructure.
Now, John, we're hearing your success story, and people are getting overwhelmed because we've got Nathan Birch in the studio with us too, and he's amassed a great property portfolio. What are you giving us the highlight suburbs for people watching the show now? Where do you think that people should be investing?
Okay, first of all, I play the long game. I buy land where I want to hold that land 10, 20 years. We have the highest population growth in Australian history, so I'm looking at 10, 20 years. What are the big employment growth areas? The employment growth areas are two things, just two things, healthcare and education. So I'm looking at infrastructure around healthcare and education, and then I'm looking for price opportunities in there as well. So I'm buying in Adelaide today in the northern area around Elizabeth, because Adelaide was built after the Second World War as a car city, and Elizabeth was a booming city. It's got all the infrastructure, and it's now got some really good little areas, not great areas, but little areas around within the Playford local government area, Blake's Crossing, etc., that are showing about 6% population growth. And the house pricing's gone, I should say land prices have gone up about 32% per annum in the last 18 years. And it's still affordable. I can buy land for about $450 a square metre, put a house on there, be cash flow neutral, and set and forget. So I'm targeting Adelaide. I like Adelaide because Adelaide's built the biggest hospital in Australia, and Flinders University is really world class. And remember, I say healthcare because healthcare will employ 1 in 5, 1 in 6 people in Australia in the next 20 years, and the other is education, and particularly foreign students. We have 800,000 foreign students in this country today, and that grew by 100,000 last year. Now, that is a number that is off the charts, and the universities and even schools are now getting smart and building campuses in these outer areas, and that's burgeoning, particularly from Chinese students and Indian students. So Adelaide I tip as an area, and also I've got my eye on the Olympic Dam project, which is the biggest project in Australia. It will be when it's done, owned by BHP, and if they press the button on it in 2020, that will transform that northern area. I'm big in Melbourne, particularly in the north. And I talk about schools. Ivanhoe Grammar moved a campus into the northern area, and that's just absolutely killing it. Absolutely killing it. I've bought a lot of land around there, and that Mernda Wallert, which is, 40, 50 k's from the CBD, is really thriving. The government's spending $600 million on a new railway station building now in Mernda. They previously built one in South Morang, and we bought a lot in South Morang, and that's just really doing well. Land prices the last 5 years in that area has gone from $400 a square metre up to $900 a square metre. So well outperformed the median house price in Melbourne, but still affordable. Rates of returns are a little bit lower. If you're buying it, you might have to put a little bit in, but with rent growth and population growth in Melbourne, I'm still seeing it being cash flow positive in the next 1 to 2 years. And I'm a big fan of southeast Queensland. The population growth I should say the unemployment rate on the Gold Coast today is just 3.7%. And southeast Queensland has a massive infrastructure spend. That means dollars and jobs. And as we heard from Cameron previously, there's migration going into that area, southeast Queensland, and there's affordable land. I like between Gold Coast, Ipswich and Brisbane, I call it the Golden Triangle, particularly hot suburbs like Pimpamar and Springfield, and in between those two suburbs. And the big thing I like about it is, in Gold Coast City Council, as an example, some areas you can buy 400 and 500 square metres blocks of land where they downzone, they've allowed 100 square metre lots. So that's where what I call the arbitrage, where you're able to buy land at $400, $500 a metre that will be $1,500, $2,000 a metre just with this improvement of density.